Solving by the quadratic formula. So use the quadratic formula to solve 6x squared plus 7x minus 3 equals 0. And we see over here, this is the quadratic formula. So a lot of students leave off a few things. They may get this part right, but they leave off that this is actually solutions for ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So this is an equation in quadratic form. It has to be in this form. All the terms have to be on the left-hand side. You can't have ax squared plus bx equals some other number over here. Everything has to be on the left. And if this is your equation, the solutions are x equals this. So a lot of students leave off the x and they forget you're talking about x values when you finish. So solutions of quadratic equations are x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now if you want to Google this, you can Google the quadratic formula song, and you'll actually, it's a wealth of options. There's many versions. You can hear people singing the quadratic formula to the tune, Pop Goes the Weasel. There's also an Adele song that's been modified. Lots and lots and lots of things. However you want to remember it, this is very, very, very important. You really need to know how to solve the quadratic equations. So if we're going to use the quadratic formula, it would be helpful if we knew what these letters were, right? So label a few things. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I'm just rewriting the form above our equation. So we're looking for a. A is the coefficient of x squared. So look at our equation. We see x squared. Coefficient, remember, is just a number multiplied in front of the variable. So if we have x squared, the coefficient is 6. Okay, and then we see that b is the coefficient of x. So we have 7x. So b must be 7. And we see that c is the constant. So remember, constant means there's no variable there. It's really like x to the 0. So our constant term is negative 3. And then we're going to plug in all of the pieces. Okay. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of it divided by 2a. So a couple of things I want to point out, just be very careful. Please memorize this formula. Please commit it to memory. Biggest mistakes I see is students forget the sign in the middle. A lot of them only divide one piece by 2a. It's all of it divided by 2a. So let's fill in each piece. The next biggest mistake I see is people fill in things other than a, b, and c. The only place you see an x is on the left-hand side. There are no variables over here on the right-hand side. Okay? Only plugging in variables over here with x. Okay? So if you see a is 6, you're going to put it right there. B is 7, so you're going to put a 7 right there. C is negative 3. So let's fill it in. X equals negative b, so negative 7 plus or minus the square root. Okay, and then we have b squared. Well, b is 7. So this is 7 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 3. And all of that is divided by 2 times a, so 2 times 6. Just taking a moment to color code this so you can see what we've done. Again, please be very, very, very careful. A lot of students want to put x's in here. No x's over here, just the numbers. The coefficients or the constant go on this side. Then we start cleaning it up. X equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of, well, 7 squared is 49. And then we have negative 4 times 6 times negative 3. Okay? And 6 times 4 is 24 times 3 is 72. But notice, I want to point out something. Be very, very, very careful. You have a minus sign here and a minus sign here. A negative times a negative becomes a positive. Okay, and then we divide by 12. So then we're going to clean up under our root. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of, we have 49 plus 72, which is 121, and divide the whole thing by 12. Well, the square root of 121 is 11, so we have negative 7 plus or minus 11 over 12. We can write this has two answers. So x equals negative 7 plus 11 over 12, or x equals negative 7 minus 11 over 12. Well, negative 7 plus 11 is the same as 11 minus 7, right? So we get 4 over 12, and notice the sign SIG in here is a positive. So we can reduce 4 over 12, divide both pieces by 4, the top by 4, you get 1, divide the bottom by 4, and you get a 3. Then over here we have negative 7 minus 11. If you have two numbers that you're combining with the same sign, you're going to add them and then use the sign they both have. So 7 plus 11 is 18, so you get negative 18 over 12. And then divide each of these by, what, 6? I think so. 18 divided by 6, you get a negative 3. 12 divided by 6, you get a 2. Okay, perfect. So there are two answers, x equals 1/3 and x equals negative 3/2. Let's try another one. Use the quadratic formula to solve 3x squared plus 4x equals 1. So let's label each piece. A is the coefficient of x squared, so it's 3. Is the coefficient of x, which is 4. Let's see. You may be tempted to say that C is 1. C is not 1. Why is C not 1? We haven't used that number yet, right? Okay. C is not 1 because we do not have our form written correctly. So it says solutions of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 are given by this quadratic formula. We don't have that, right? We have ax squared plus bx. There's no plus c, right? So we probably need to rewrite this. So we need 3x squared plus 4x. The problem is this constant should be over here, right? Because we want plus c equals 0. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So 3x squared plus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Now we can see what c is. C is negative 1. Okay, so then solutions are x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b is negative 4 plus or minus the square root. B squared is 4 squared minus 4 times a times c. And the whole thing is divided by 2 times a. Okay. So we get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of, well, 4 squared is 16. And here, be very careful. You have negative 4 times a 3 times a negative 1. So 3 times 4 is 12, right? But you have a negative times a negative, you get a plus 12, and the denominator is 6. So far, so good? Okay, so then we have, let me just go and do it right here. We have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of, we have 16 plus 12, so that's what, 28 over 6. Well, 28 is not a perfect square, so we're going to take just a minute and we're going to look at the prime factorization of 28 to pull out any perfect square factors. Okay, so we're just going to do it over here. 28 we factor as 2 times 14, and then 14 we factor further as 2 times 7. And we see we have the prime factors 2 and 2 and a 7. So the square root of 28 is the same thing as the square root of 2 times 2 times 7. Well, when you have 2 of something, 2 factors under a root, especially if it's a square root, there's an understood little 2 right here, right? You need 2 of them, a pair of them to come out as a single. So like the square root of 4 is a 2. So that's what this is, right? So this is really like, let me write it a little bit, one more step. This is the same thing as writing the square root of 2 times the square root of 7, because we have a rule from algebra that says the square root of AB is the same as the square root of A times the square root of B. This is square root of 4, so this is 2 root 7. 2 square roots of 7 over 6. We would like to clean this up to simplify this. So we have negative 4 plus or minus 2 root 7 over 6. We notice every single one of these, the 4, the 2, and the 6, are all even. So we can factor out a 2. So we factor out a 2, we get negative 2. because 2 times negative 2 gives you negative 4. Plus or minus, well, if we have 2 root 7 and we factor out a 2, we're just going to get plus or minus root 7. In the bottom, we still have our 6. So we can take this 2 and this 6 and we can reduce them. We can divide both of them by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is a 1. 6 divided by 2, we have a 3 on the bottom. Y'all check, make sure that's right. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 3. And remember, that's x equals, there are 2 answers. X equals negative 2 plus the square root of 7, the whole thing divided by 3, or x equals negative 2 minus the square root of 7 over 3. Those are the possible solutions.